This is where the strategic picture came apart. For much of the past year, intelligence agencies and defense analysts in the West viewed Russia and Iran as moving in lockstep, two sanctioned states locking arms to challenge Western influence. The logic seemed straightforward. Moscow would deliver high-end weapons and protection, while Tehran would contribute drones, missiles, and regional leverage. A partnership born of necessity and isolation. That framework no longer applies. The foundation of that assumed alliance has given way, and the cracks are now impossible to ignore. Reports filtering out of Moscow indicate that Russia has halted the final steps toward a formal strategic defense agreement with Iran. The fighter jets will not be delivered. The advanced air defense systems remain in storage. What was presented as a sealed pact has quietly unraveled, and the reason is not ideology nor diplomacy alone. It is economics and risk. Iran is running out of money. Its currency is unraveling. Its reserves are depleted. And Moscow, facing its own prolonged war and industrial strain, has decided not to anchor itself to a sinking partner. This is not a pause. It is a withdrawal. To understand why this happened, we have to rewind to the early phase of the Ukraine war. When Russian forces crossed the border, Moscow was hit with a scale of sanctions it had not faced before. High-tech imports vanished. Financial channels closed. In that moment, Russia turned toward states already hardened by isolation. Iran appeared to be the ideal match, experienced in sanctions evasion, rich in low-cost strike drones, and eager for advanced military upgrades. The arrangement was supposed to be straightforward. Iran would supply loitering munitions and missile systems. Russia would provide next-generation fighter aircraft and modern air defense technology, a swap that would shift the military balance in the Middle East. Iran delivered. Cargo aircraft transported large numbers of attack drones to Russia. These systems were deployed against Ukrainian infrastructure and quickly became a central part of Moscow's strike campaign. Iranian personnel reportedly assisted with training and integration. At home, Tehran amplified the narrative. Modern Russian fighters were coming. Underground bases were unveiled. Officials framed the deal as proof that Iran had broken out of isolation. Then nothing arrived. Deadlines passed. Explanations changed. And now the confirmation has emerged. The transfer is off. The technical reality makes the decision clearer. Modern combat aircraft are not symbolic assets. They require long-term financial commitments, training, maintenance, spare parts, secure basing, and years of logistical support. Russia cannot simply hand over advanced systems to a state that cannot sustain them. Iran's economy is not just under pressure, it is unraveling. The national currency has lost massive value in a short period. Inflation has surged far beyond official figures. Essential goods are increasingly out of reach for ordinary citizens. The government is covering its internal security costs by printing money, but that only accelerates the collapse. Foreign reserves are thin. Hard currency is scarce. From Moscow's perspective, this creates two dangers. First, Iran may be unable to pay, not just for the hardware, but for the ecosystem required to operate it. Second, and more seriously, an economically unstable Iran is politically unstable. Supplying advanced military technology to a regime facing internal unrest carries enormous risk. If that regime falls or fractures, those systems could be captured, compromised, or studied by adversaries. Russia is not willing to gamble its most sensitive technology on uncertainty. There is also a broader strategic shift underway. While Iran's position weakens, other regional players are strengthening their ties with Moscow. Turkey, in particular, occupies a far more valuable position. It balances NATO membership with pragmatic engagement with Russia. It controls key maritime choke points. It fields a growing domestic defense industry. Maintaining leverage with Ankara offers Moscow far more strategic return than deepening dependence on Tehran. The same applies to Gulf states. Russia relies on cooperation with major energy producers to stabilize oil prices, prices that are critical to sustaining its war economy. Provoking those states by significantly upgrading Iran's military capabilities would come at a real cost. In a hierarchy of interests, Iran falls lower than energy coordination and regional access. For Tehran, the consequences are severe. The leadership has built legitimacy on resistance and strength. It promised that alignment with the East would neutralize Western pressure. That promise has failed. China continues to purchase Iranian resources at steep discounts, but avoids entanglement. Russia has stepped back from military modernization commitments. Iran is left with aging platforms and limited options. Its air force remains largely dependent on aircraft from the Cold War era. Regional rivals operate modern fleets with advanced sensors and strike capabilities. The balance of power has shifted further away from Tehran, not closer. This financial strain is also rippling outward. Iran's regional influence relies on funding proxy groups. As cash flow tightens, those networks weaken. Delayed payments and reduced support translate into reduced operational tempo. Influence erodes not through battlefield defeat, but through empty accounts. Yet the most dangerous phase may still be ahead. History shows that regimes under extreme pressure sometimes escalate rather than retreat. If Iran concludes that conventional deterrence is unattainable and alliances unreliable, it may turn to asymmetric escalation, maritime harassment, regional proxy actions, or acceleration of its nuclear program. In that context, Russia's withdrawal may actually increase instability rather than reduce it. At the same time, Moscow's decision signals its own limits. Russia's defense industry is stretched by the ongoing conflict. Equipment intended for export is now needed domestically. There is little surplus to distribute, especially without guaranteed payment. The image of an unstoppable axis has cracked, revealing a collection of states acting primarily in self-preservation. For Western policymakers, this fragmentation matters. It demonstrates that pressure, when sustained and enforced, can widen fractures within adversarial blocs. These partnerships are not bound by loyalty, they are bound by utility. When that utility disappears, so does the alliance. Inside Iran, the situation is increasingly volatile. Currency collapse has wiped out savings. Living costs continue to rise. The state has responded with repression, but repression alone cannot stabilize an economy. As the myth of powerful external backing dissolves, public confidence erodes further. Technically, the abandoned deal likely went beyond aircraft. It would have involved radar integration, maintenance infrastructure, and foreign personnel embedded for years. Given repeated security breaches and intelligence leaks inside Iran, Russia may have judged that protecting its technology and its people was no longer feasible. Energy politics also loom large. Cooperation with major oil producers outweighs ideological alignment. Moscow chose economic survival over symbolism. So where does this leave Iran? Isolated, financially strained, and strategically exposed. Options are narrowing. Domestic production cannot fully replace advanced imports. Alternative suppliers are reluctant. Time is no longer on Tehran's side. This moment marks more than a canceled weapons transfer. It marks a shift in the regional equation. The idea of a rising, unified anti-Western bloc has proven fragile. Interests diverge, pressure works, and states facing collapse are quietly abandoned. What happens next depends on Tehran's response: escalation or implosion, adaptation or isolation. The outcome will shape not only Iran's future, but the strategic balance of the Middle East.